What's up, guys? Welcome to the video. I want to do one more walkthrough so that I can kind of show you guys the bug up until this point. Now, if I was going to continue with this bug, some of the negative features that I'm going to point out, I would just change and make them better. But once I started working on the new chassis, I pretty much stopped making improvements on this chassis. But either way, I'm just going to start at one corner. I'm going to walk around the bug and I'm going to show you, I'm going to try and give you as much information on it as I possibly can, and I'm going to point out the negatives so that if you guys are building your own Baja or Baja Bug or what have you, hopefully it will help you out a little bit. So let's start at the front end. So the front end is a arm suspension. It's using these spindles that I bought from Cartech, and these spindles have combo axles on them, and then these are Jamar front disc brakes that obviously are set up for the combo axles. And I've been very happy with that. These are 31-inch tires. They stop the tires pretty good. However, where I ride, since I ride up in the mountains a lot, there's a lot of times where you're going downhill a lot. If I go down those downhills too aggressively, the brakes do start to overheat because the rotors are a little bit small, I think, for the 31-inch tires. These are running Fox 2-inch emulsion shock absorbers in the front. These are 10-inch travel. My springs right now are very soft. You can see my top spring is a 10-inch with a 100-pound capacity, and the bottom spring is also a 10-inch with, I think, 150-pound capacity. The rack and pinion that I'm using is actually a rack and pinion that is meant for a beam front suspension. I just flipped it upside down so that the steering linkage works on the forward-facing spindle, which is what this one is. That's worked out pretty well for me. What I liked about that is it puts the connection points of the steering linkages very close, which enabled me to put the connection points for the control arms very close, so that I was trying to get my control arms as long as possible. As far as how the geometry on this front suspension has worked out, I'm actually very happy with it. I don't have any complaints as far as the travel or the camber or anything like that. As you look at it right now, this is actually set up for 0 camber at ride height. This is the one-piece front end that I got from Cartech. Not much to say about this. I'm pretty happy with it. I had to make some pretty dramatic changes to it to get it to fit this body, but I would have to imagine that every one-piece front end is like that. I've connected it with these rubber or polyurethane fiberglass bolts, which have been really good. As the body's bouncing around and everything, it actually allows a little bit of flex in there, and none of my connection points have done any stress cracking or anything like that, so those have worked out really well. Got my LED headlights with the halo rings in there. My chassis from the front end back is all flat, but where it connects to the chassis and comes forward here, it goes up 7 degrees, and then my suspension is actually built parallel off of that. So that 7 degrees is actually what gives me my 7 degrees of caster. Now, if I decided I wanted more or less, and 7 degrees has turned out to be quite a bit, because if you let go of the wheel, it fights you back to center pretty strong. That's good and bad. It's good because you want it to center, but you know, if you're making tight turns and whatnot, you do have to fight it a little bit. But with my upper control arm, I wanted to give myself the ability to make some changes to the caster if needed. So my upper control arms actually connect with heims. So if I can adjust those heims and turn the control arm this way or that way, doing that will actually rotate the spindle forward or backwards. So if you need to make some adjustments to your caster, if you allow your upper control arm heims like that, you can do that. And then you'll notice with my lower control arm, it's just connected with bushings because I don't need to make any adjustments on that. I think the bushings they're definitely cheaper. They're a little bit easier to fabricate, and I feel like they're a little bit stronger. The downside is they're squeaky. The heims are really quiet, the bushings are squeaky. I have noticed on hot summer days here, like if it's 80 degrees and above, I have my radiator mounted in back here, and the air goes through it this way, and it's meant to blow the air through. And I left a lot of holes in the back end here, and my hope was that the air would push out, and it does do that. However, like, cooling the engine is no problem, but the way that these bug bodies are set up, you know, I don't have any windows in here except the front windshield, and you don't really get any air movement inside the cab. It's like completely neutral zone here, just the way that it's shaped as you're moving. And so what happens is, over time, this radiator will warm up the cab. It won't get super hot, but let me tell you, on a hot summer day, it gets uncomfortable. It gets to the point where it's not fun. So what I ended up doing for kind of a temporary solution is I had aluminum paneling on the front here, and I just took this off on both sides, and that makes it so that with that aluminum paneling off, you get a bunch of airflow going through the cab, and then the radiator problem is gone. You've got enough fresh air coming into the cab that it doesn't warm up the cab at all. Now, if I was sticking with this chassis and this Bug, what I would do is I would modify these panels so that they had flaps that I could open and close, because sometimes you don't want them open, because sometimes you don't want that much air flowing through there. So I would create flaps that could open and close with a lever. And on the new chassis that I'm working on, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create these panels so that they have large vents that can open and close, and they'll have a little screen in there to keep rocks and bugs and whatnot from getting sucked in there. But I'm also going to have a slightly design change of the radiator placement on the new chassis. But either way, keep that in mind. If you're working on a Bug like this, you might want to make something here so that you can open up vents and really get some fresh air moving through there. Now, with this paneling off, you can see my Willwood reverse hanging pedal assembly, and this does have a balance bar in there for the front and rear brakes. It's got 3/4 inch master cylinder for the clutch. It's got a 3/4 for the rear and a 3/4 for the front. That all has worked extremely well as far as pedal travel. As a matter of fact, it does not take much pedal travel before the brakes start activating. And then with that pedal assembly, I bought the balance bar adjustment knob. So if I rotate this knob to the right or to the left, it actually changes the pivot point angle for the balance bar for the front and rear master cylinders. That makes it so that when you step on the brake pedal, it actually changes how much, it's like a proportioning valve. It changes how much the front brakes work and the rear brakes work. I've actually been extremely happy with that. I would not do it again without that balance bar. It allows a lot of fine tuning on the trail. If you get on a trail that's super loose gravel, or if you're on a trail that's more hard packed, if you want to make adjustments to how your Bug or your Baja is going to affect when you hit the brakes, that's extremely helpful. As far as inside the cab here, not too much. I didn't go too far with this. I do have my GPS unit in the center here for my speed, my engine temperature, altitude. I can track waypoints, I can plot courses, all sorts of things like that. My dashboard right now is a little bit of a mix of controls that I had for the air-cooled motor, and then I halfway through swapped over to the water-cooled motor. So I've got a little bit of a mix match here. The new chassis will be dedicated only to the water-cooled. If you want specifics on the wiring, I have some pretty detailed videos on the wiring that I did. It also has turning brakes right here. These things are the most fun in the whole wide world. I would not, like, these are definitely going to be carried over to the new chassis. These are so much fun, allowing you to drift, allowing you to pull both of them back to apply just the rear brakes. Of course, you can go like this for one side or the other. It's helped me on the trail. You know, it's got an open differential on this vehicle, so if you're in a little bit of a loose spot, you can hold the wheel with less traction. There's just a lot that you can do with these turning brakes. These are made by CNC, and these are also 3/4 inch pistons on each little master cylinder that these apply. Got my fire extinguisher there. My little gas pedal here. This is the Ecotech that's in here is drive-by-wire, so this is the actual gas pedal that came out of the car that I took this engine out of. You can see here, when I built this chassis, I built it with the Volkswagen tunnel is still in here. right up there. And what I did is I grafted in, like, the base chassis is a square tubing chassis that I made. The floor pan on this Baja when I got it was in horrible shape. I ended up just sawzalling off the, I think the Volkswagen guys call these the heater channels, but I sawzalled those off. A 3" by 2" rectangular tubing fits in there really well, and you can see I just tack welded the body right back onto that 3" by 2". And now this 3" by 2" actually bolts to the chassis that I built. And then I set up the tubing and whatnot so that you can actually take out all the bolts for the body. There's some in the rear, there's some on the heater channels there, there's some in the front, they're kind of all over the place. There's some connection points up here where it ties the body into the roll cage. But once you take all those bolts out, you can hook some straps up and you can lift the body straight up, and what you'll be left with is the chassis and your engine and all that. So in the rear here, I have a fuel cell that I built, and it's got 2 electronic fuel pumps in it for the Ecotec motor. Then we come around here to the rear suspension. I won't go too crazy onto this. I'll try and link to a video where I go over some of this, because I could talk about this for an hour alone. This is actually not A-arm suspension, this is H-arm suspension. I made all of this, and if you're wondering how I like it, I absolutely love it. I'm not bashing the swing arms, because there's a lot of benefits to the swing arms, but there's also a lot of benefits to this H-arm, or you could call it A-arm suspension. So it's been great. It's worked really well over the trails. It's been easy to tune and adjust, and I haven't really had any issues with it. These rear shocks are also Fox 2" emulsion. They are 14" travel. The bottom springs are 14 by 300, and the top springs are, I think, are 14 by 275. Also, like the front, this is a little bit too loose, and when I switch all this stuff over to the new chassis, I'm going to upsize the springs, at least the bottom spring, a little bit. I'll probably go to like a 350 or 400 to try and stiffen things up a little bit. If you notice back here, I got my radiator here. It blows back and a little bit down. Yes, I did have some minor issues with that for heat in the cab, but I went over that earlier. You'll notice right now, this is my computer and my main wiring harness for the Ecotec. This is not my long-term solution on the new chassis. This will be in a different location. This is here right now because from the factory wiring harness that I got from the junkyard, it fits here. I would not recommend leaving this here long-term. And if I was going to keep running this Baja, I would move this somewhere where it's a little bit more protected and somewhere where it's not directly in the heat from the radiator. I think it would be better if this was mounted somewhere where it was just getting ambient air blown over it to help keep this cool. This radiator is actually a radiator meant for a Subaru WRX. It's got 2 electric cooling fans on it right now. Although the cab gets hot, this radiator easily cools this 2.4 liter Ecotec motor. As a matter of fact, almost 90% of the time, it's only running one of the fans. If I'm moving slower and higher RPMs, I'll hear the second fan kick on, but for the most part, it just does it with the one fan. This is the latest exhaust that I made. This engine is a Chevy 2.4 liter Ecotec with the variable valve timing. It came out of a 2007 Chevy Cobalt. The exhaust that I have on it right now, this is actually just a header made for an Ecotec, not for an Ecotec Baja. This is actually meant for an Ecotec if it was still in the Chevy Cobalt. And then this is just, I think, like a 12" basically a glass pack. And then I made the, this is 2" pipe that just wraps around, and then I just solid welded it into the header. The Ecotec, like I said, it's a 2007 out of a Chevy Cobalt. When I grabbed it out of the junkyard, it had 113,000 miles on it. The power and reliability out of this engine has been second to none. It actually has not given me a single problem, a single hiccup since I installed it. It's just been the most reliable thing. You just start it up and it just wants to go and go and go. My drive shafts are U-joints. I cobbled those together with pieces from the junkyard. Most of these parts originated from Jeep Grand Cherokees. I also, if you look back in my archives, I do have a video dedicated to making of this. I also have not had any problems with this drive shaft. It's been fantastic. I can get 42 degrees out of it, but I have it limit strapped to 40 degrees. That's my limiting factor, are the U-joints. But like I said, this has been very good, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. And this is all coupled to a bus Type 2 transaxle that is basically bone stock. When I bought it, I did have the local transmission rebuilder rebuild it, and he specializes in Volkswagen's transmissions. So he rebuilt it and it kind of made it fresh, but it's bone stock at this point. What you're looking at in the rear here, these are 33 by 10.5 BF Goodrich all-terrains. They're on stock Volkswagen wide 5 wheels, but they have been widened 2 inches, so they're now 15 by 6 as opposed to 15 by 4. The front tires are 31 by 9.5, and they're on stock Volkswagen wide 5 wheels that have not been widened, so they're actually 15 by 4. And those, that's worked out just fine. So thanks for watching the video, guys. If you have any questions, just hit me up in the comments. I'm more than happy to try and answer any questions you might have. I hope that this is motivating you guys to go work on some of your stuff, whatever that may be, and I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.